Yep. Am I good? Everybody good?
Yep.
I got some tension. We still 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
Ready, Pete?
Mm-hmm. Hey everybody, welcome back. Welcome to the lunch break with Bass University Live. I'm Pete Gluszek. We've been testing some of our gear out here on, working with our new live product so we can bring you some HD quality stream, some great audio, including the airplanes going over our head right now. And we're going to be doing this type of stuff for Bass University TV throughout the next year. We're going to be bringing you some of the greatest instructors in the world, teaching you what they're really good at, and we're going to be bringing it to you live. And this is great. We're really excited about it because it's a chance for you guys to interact with us. It's a chance for you guys to ask questions to whoever our guest may be that day. Today it's me. So bring your questions, whatever you want to talk about. Let me know. And we broadcast all over the world. We have subscribers in 13 different countries. So let us know. What do you guys want to see? What would you like to see us doing live? Would you like to see us fishing at the base of Niagara Falls? Would you like to see us fishing out with giant swim baits on the California, Southern California, giant smallmouth up north, catching those big giant Texas or Florida bass? What would you guys like to see us feature on Bass University Live? Let us know right here, because we're all watching and we're scripting out this. This is for you. So we want to provide you with the stuff that you want to see, with the anglers that you want to see. And I know I'm at the top of your list, but let us know who you want to see live. I know we're going to have Ike coming up in October. We had Gerald Swindle a few weeks ago and Mark Zona doing some live testing with those guys as well, but we're going to have a lot more. But let us know who you want to see. Let us know the topics you want to hear about. Let us know the places that you would like us to fish and like to learn about, whether it's spotted bass, smallmouth bass, largemouth bass, you name it, let us know. We're streaming live right now. We're streaming to YouTube. If you guys are watching us there, hi everybody. Facebook as well. We always see you guys, and we're glad you're with us here today. And we're going to be looking at your questions there. We're also streaming live over at Bass U TV. So all of our subscribers, hey guys, thanks for being with us. And we've got a lot of great stuff coming for all of our subscribers. Guys, I know a lot of you guys hunt and fish. And hunting season's almost in full swing. It is in full swing in a lot of places, I'm sure. We've got a great Flambeau Outdoors sales promotion coming for you guys. It's the biggest sale we've ever had with Flambeau. Thanks, Flambeau, for doing that with us. We're going to be announcing that in a couple weeks. That's going to be live in 2 weeks from now. We're going to have just a great opportunity for you guys to buy all the hunting and fishing gear that Flambeau Outdoors has to offer. So you want to check that out. If you're not a subscriber, man, come on over. Come join us at bassu.tv. Use the code TRYBU and you get 10 days free to check it out. So come over, check out what we're doing. We've got a lot more coming We have Bass University Live in studio that we do every month as well. We have in-studio guests, we have Skype-in guests, we talk to the greatest anglers in the world. Seems like all we can talk about lately is who's fishing MLF, who's fishing Bassmasters, who's fishing FLW. I don't know where I would fish, but it looks like every one of them is a great place to start your professional career right now. So there's a lot going on in the fishing industry. You guys want to talk about that? Let me know, we can talk about that. But right now, I am here on a little lake that I've never fished. It's right by my house. It's a tributary to the Delaware River that has been dammed and creates this little lake. It's kind of a riverine lake, a couple miles long maybe. It's about 4 feet deep in the middle. It has about 6 to 12 inches of visibility right now. If you were watching our earlier stream, you heard me talk about we've had rain in the last 24-hour period. And I've never been here before, but I know what flooded bushes look like. So the water's up. I got to assume the water clarity is a little bit off. And when I first started looking at this place, I had one of my best search tools, one of my most consistent search tools when I'm going to a place that I don't know, when I'm dealing with stained water, flooded water situation. Boy, it's hard to beat a chatterbait. And on my second or third cast, I caught a beautiful 4-pound fish. We're going to put that up on our Facebook page. It's on our Instagram feed right now, but we could show you that. And we're going to do some fishing right now. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the tools that I'm going to use to break down a new body of water. In this particular case, like I said, we got stained, a little bit high water, a lot of flooded stuff. So I'm definitely bringing some power fishing tools. I've got a chatterbait ready to go. On the deck of the boat, I have a variety of things because I really don't know what I'm going to use. And I've got to have a variety of things. And I drop baits, which is something like a jig or a creature bait. I've got to have one of those tied on. In this case, I've got a little finesse jig tied on. When you're talking about drop baits, you've also got to be prepared to go finesse, because even though we've got stained water, high water situations, these lakes, the water's warm, water temperature is very, very warm. It's 75 degrees. It's still toward the end of the summer. Fish can be lethargic, very difficult to catch. So you've always got to have a finesse presentation ready to go when you're scouting a new body of water. One of the tips that I want to let you guys know, and a lot of guys, they come right out of the gate on a new place throwing finesse right, a little bit too early. In my opinion, in a lot of cases. I think that's a mistake. I think a lot of times we've got to start power fishing. We've got to give those big fish a chance to bite for us. And they're going to bite a jig, they're going to bite, a chatterbait, they're going to bite a big crankbait. You can also see I have a square bill tied on here. And these are my big four: crankbait, chatterbait, a jig, and then a finesse presentation, which is a Senko. And I'm going to use these 4 tools. I've also got over here, I've got a buzzbait, I've got a frog, spinnerbait, and a deeper diving crankbait. I got a lot of things tied on. Really don't know what I'm going to encounter. So that's what I'm doing. I'm out here, looking for new body water. But go big early, Go with your power baits right out of the gate. Give those bigger fish a chance to bite, because I can tell you a lot of times guys go finesse too early, and a finesse presentation on a big fish, oftentimes they'll look right past it. So you want to know, get a feel for your lake. You want to know when to fish big and when to fish little. But you got to mix it up. You got to do both on a new body of water, but just don't go finesse right out of the gate. That's all I'm saying. But we got lily pads here. We've got, you can see a culvert here, and these are discharge culverts. This lake has, water drainage all up and down the river here, and they come through these culverts. And when it's actively raining, we have another place just like this, the Cooper River, that I have fished on occasion, and it has the same exact thing. So I've seen these before, and when the rain's coming, these things are running. And when these are running, that's where you want to be fishing. And I don't care where you are. I've seen this down in Alabama, Georgia, Texas. You have run-ins, you have rain events that where run-ins are actively generating flow. There's increased flow through your body of water. That's what you want to target for sure. And these right now are not flowing, but there wasn't quite enough rain to keep them flowing. but still very, very good piece of habitat, and I'm going to look at that. And right up here, we've got a great piece of habitat, which is a blowdown tree, which intersects the grass bed, and you can see it comes way out. And you know, anytime you got an isolated piece of cover, something a little different, you know, you gotta target that. That's a huge target. You know, whether you're a beginner or whether you've been doing this for a lot of years, a lot of times your bigger fish, your numbers of fish are going to be right here on this isolated piece of cover where things are broken up a little bit. Now I'm pulling a chatterbait through this stuff, and it's coming through fairly good. Chatterbait is not the best tool all the time around wood with our exposed hook. A lot of times, whatever you get it next to, it'll just hook right up. But I tell you one, a chatterbait makes a weedless version, and I don't have one rigged right now, but that weedless version is a dynamite asset because you can really allow that bait to get down into the cover. But we're going to try to fish this one with an exposed hook, and of course, there you go. I hung right up on it. But that's what you want to do. You want to get in there, you want to hit that wood, and that's how you get that reaction strike. Now, one of the things you want to do on this is, you know, use your bow and arrow snap. I use that a lot to free up my lures when they get hung. And a lot of times you can get it out without having to go all the way in. But I'm all the way in on top of this piece of cover right now. And what I'll do is I've probably spooked any fish that might be using this habitat. But being I'm up in here, I can cast way shallow on the habitat, and I'll take a few casts. You might think you've impacted the cover and spooked the fish, but you'd be surprised. The heavier the cover, the closer you can get to the fish without spooking them. Now, one of the primary habitats that I see as we're going down this bank here is I see a lot of lily pads, and one of the things I'm going to look for in the lily pads is movement, and I've seen some of that already since we've been here. Is what you'll see is you know, the lily pads don't have a lot of flow on them. There's not much pushing on them, but you'll see a set of lily pads just quiver and flicker, and a lot of times what that is a bass feeding on a bluegill, ambushing something, and he's sitting right next to a lily pad stalk, and he's basically giving himself away, you know. And a lot of times they can do that, so you got to pay attention to those lily pads as you're fishing along through it. And I'm pulling this chatterbait through. But what I'm looking for as I come down through here is I'm looking for outside edges, holes, pockets inside the pads. I'm letting my chatterbait get down. A lot of times I'll let my chatterbait fall all the way to the bottom before I even start reeling it. Because with this high water, you know, we've got about 4 feet of water up in those pads. So, you know, a lot of times I want to, you know, those fish will be right down at the base of the pads. I want to make sure I'm getting my bait down to them. But here we've got like a little isolated patch of pads out in front of this culvert, which, you know, beginnings and ends of grass beds are always a great place to target. They make for great ambush opportunities for predators. So I'm always keyed up on beginnings and ends. And in this case, also we've got multiple types of habitat coming together. We've got, as a turtle just storms in, tries to get my chatterbait. We've got 2 types of cover. We've got a hard concrete structure coming together with soft vegetation. And those 2 types of habitat coming together, anytime you see 2 types coming together, you want to take a second and fish it. Whether it's 2 types of grass, you know, wood and rock mixed, any of that stuff. Anytime you get multiple types of habitat together, it's a key piece of structure. We got wedged up here pretty good. I want to remind you guys that this show is for you guys. So you have any questions, anything you want to talk about? The floor is yours, my friend. I will tell you some things we've got coming on Bass University TV. We've done a lot of filming with Mark Zona, which Mark is not only one of the best hosts in the sport of fishing. I know you've all seen him on Bassmaster Live, but he is also an amazing angler, particularly strong smallmouth fisherman. And you're going to see, Mark is going to be doing some training, or did some training with us, and we're going to be producing that, airing that footage on Bass University TV as we get a little bit deeper into the fall. And if you're not a subscriber to Bass U TV, let you know a little bit about what we do. Every week we launch 2 brand new pieces of content. We launch a seminar piece, which is one of our instructors using PowerPoint in class live, talking to students and teaching about the things that they're really good at. We launch that content every Thursday. So every Thursday you can get a new episode of Bass U TV, and every Tuesday we launch an on-water piece where we take those same guys and a bunch of talented guys. As a matter of fact, we had James Elam. Many of you may have seen him win the Bassmaster Elite just recently. We had James out. Where did we have him out, Jeff? We had James. We were down in Delaware, of all places. We went to Lum's Pond in Delaware. I don't know if anybody listening to this has ever fished Lum's Pond, but it was the first time I've ever seen it. Looked like a pretty good lake. But James fished there, did some great sonar work, and you can go check that on Bass U TV right now. He's red hot coming off of his win right now. What do you got, E?
All right, Pete. Armin wants to know what your take on Swimbaits is and when to throw them in the fall transition. What areas do you target?
Armin, talking about swimbait fishing. Thanks for the question, man. Swimbaits, man, I'm glad you brought it up, because we're going through that fall transition right now, or we're going to be going through it pretty soon. And up in my part of the country, what happens now, I'll get back to that swimbait question in a minute, but I want to show you how I did this. Right, I was hooked up really hard on a piece of rock or wood. And one of the things I do is I reel my rod down to the tip, all the way down to the bait. And then very lightly, I push off, and it'll release that bait from the habitat almost every time. A lot of times guys get hung up and they pull and flex that rod, and really all that's doing is burying that hook in deeper. You can save your lure virtually every time by reeling up to it, now I say just using your fingers, and you just punch it off. And the reason why you want to be delicate is these rods, well, this is a casting rod, this is a high quality rod, but they don't take compression. No rod, no graphite does very well. So if you jam it down in there, you're going to risk breaking it. So you just want to lightly push it off and come off almost every time. But we're talking about fall transition swim baits. Here it comes, man. I mean, in the fall, we're going to start seeing bait fish group up. We're going to start seeing, up in my part of the country, the vegetation starts dying. And that forces the bait fish out in the open. You start really seeing groups come together, and we're going to start seeing that real soon. And swim baits are just such a dynamite tool. One of my favorites is that GT60, the search bait by Storm. It's just such a versatile bait. If you've never thrown swim baits before, it's a great place to start, and I use them a lot in my fishing, especially this time of year as the water cools. But that's a soft plastic swim bait. There's big, giant, mega hard swim baits, which, I've got a little bit of experience with the glide baits and some of those things. The guys out west really are doing a lot of stuff. People all over the country are using them really well. I don't have a lot of experience with them, but I fish soft baits a lot, and I'll be fishing, variety of sizes. Right now, up in the upper Chesapeake, we've got shad in about 3 or 4 inches in length. So when I'm fishing a swim bait, man, I'm throwing that smallest GT. you know, 360, that's it's about a 3.5-inch variety. That's the bait that I'm going to be using. I love fishing that stuff around the bait fish, you know, when we get into this fall type period. Now you start seeing fish migrating up the creeks. I'm already starting to see it. The water temperature's hardly even cooled down, but we're already seeing that migration, those fish starting to move towards that bait. But swim baits is definitely a killer, you know, that time of year. But give that storm bait a try. It's a good one, and it'll certainly catch them for you. Me and my son were even down fishing in the saltwater, catching bluefish, giant bluefish on that big search bait, which is pretty awesome. You can check my Facebook feed and see some of those pictures. But that's a great question. Fishing swim baits, fall transition, and we're gonna have it here. One of the places that I really like to fish, if you've got a lake that has vegetation in it, during the fall, what happens is that vegetation starts to die, and it even starts to die before the water temperature falls. What you see is the length of day is kind of starts killing that grass off, and the bait fish will hang in that grass and hang in that grass until the last grass is gone. And what I really like to do is I like to fish the hard habitat like bridges, rock jetties. Man, I like to fish that hard cover in the fall, because as those fall cold fronts come through, as that grass starts to die, it flushes that bait fish out. And those hard spots, those current breaks or changes that are hard, are where the predators are going to set up. So that's a great place to throw your swim baits in the fall. It's a great place to throw any bait. One of my favorite ways to catch them that time of year is cranking. The crankbait really comes alive. Seems like during the summer we spend our times drop shotting, fishing deep, finesse fishing, but the fall is when the power baits start really coming back into play. So definitely look for that to happen. Great question.
So David's got a chatterbait paddletail worm, great gravity. I'm wondering if you're ever using paddletail worm or something like that.
Paddletail worm is, man, you just don't hear many guys talk about that. And I'll bring it up because recently where I spend a lot of my time is on the Chesapeake, and we fish chatterbaits a lot. But the guys from Florida who are grass gurus came up here in the grass, and they started using paddletail trailers, or I'm sorry, paddletail worms straight, just swimming them through that grass. They absolutely dominated the Federation Divisional on the upper Chesapeake Bay using that technique. The paddletail worm, Ike and Ellie used the paddletail worm to win the Classic in 2003. It's a bait that doesn't get a lot of attention, and it is a very, very consistent bait, whether you're swimming it or whether you're just pitching it. It's a really great way to catch them. Now, I don't typically use it on the back. I can't imagine, to be honest with you, I've not found a trailer on the back of a chatterbait that will not trigger them at some point, some way. And I use a boot tail. This is a skinny dipper that I have on here. I use a variety of swim baits as my trailer. You know, you have the Yamamoto and the Lake Fork, fork tail action, split tail action baits that are really good. I know Brett Height uses those, made them famous, won a ton of money. But I would bet that paddle tail would be an equally effective trailer on the back of a chatterbait. Some of the stuff that I like to do too with a chatterbait is I take the trailer off, and you can't believe the erratic nature of the bait when you remove the trailer completely. But what I will tell you is, a lot of times when I'm fishing really heavy habitat and I'm hanging up a lot, I like to go to those crawl trailers, something that has a bigger stance, and I think it really helps me come through the pad stems a lot. But yeah, I know that trailer is going to work. It's going to be real similar to a swim bait. You're going to have the vibration action, and then you have the dual action of the swimming tail. It's certainly going to get them. And the other thing that's probably real helpful is I fish a lot of shallow water, so I like a bulkier bait when I'm fishing shallow. It makes it so I don't have to really power that bait through the habitat so much, but a thinner profile like the paddletail worm is going to allow me fish a little bit deeper. So experiment with your trailers a little bit and color combinations, but this is one of my favorites right here, is this black and white combination.
Got one from Pete. This is an interesting question. Topwater. He goes, anything in particular to watch for signals that topwater smash jet is on?
Good question. Anything particular I look? The first thing I look for is when I throw out a topwater and it smashes. Something smashes it. That's the first indicator. What do you got, Jeff? Repeat the question about what is the first?
So, is there anything in particular you're watching for the signals that fall topwater smash fest is on?
Anything in particular I watch for when the fall smash fest topwater bite is on? You know, it's coming, right? It's definitely coming. One of the first things I'm looking for is an abundance of bait. You'll start seeing the bait grouping up this time of year. When I start seeing that, I start thinking topwater is going to be a possibility, and it really gets going, and it'll stay going deep into the fall. It can be a temperature dependent thing, and you got to be very wary of that. When we get these extreme cold fronts in the fall, you're going to see that topwater bite, you know, tail off. When water temperature drops 5 degrees overnight, sometimes that, you know, that can kill a bite in the short term, but then it'll come back, right? So in the immediate day, when the water temperature drops, it's going to kill it. But falling water temperature is another deal. Those fish are coming shallow. The bait's coming shallow. The predators are coming shallow. When those fish move shallow in the fall, topwater becomes a possibility. And then that's definitely another thing I'm watching. I'm watching falling water temperatures. I'm watching congregated bait. It lets me know to have my topwater baits on, and I got them on right now with a buzzbait and a frog. So I'll definitely be looking for those things in the fall. Good question. Joseph wants to know what temperature does the fall transition actually begin in. And be honest with you, for my experience, the most important thing in keying the fall transition and getting it moving is not the water temperature as much as it is the length of day. When you start going, like when you're in July, I mean, it's 14 hours of daylight around here and in most places in the States. But then as you start getting into this time of year, boy, that sun starts setting at 6 o'clock. It'll be starting to set at 5 o'clock. So the length of day is shrinking. And that is when things really start happening, when that length of day gets shorter. It's always in tune with water temperature falling too. But water temp, don't be afraid to ignore that water temperature in the fall. If the days are short and we're in October, we're in November, you can bet those shad are moving. The bait fish are moving, so you want to look for that. So length of day is most important. And water temperature is dependent on where you live. We're 75-degree water temperatures right here down south. It's still probably hovering in the 80s or the 90s in places. And, when they see water temperatures down into the 70s, it might really key those shad into moving down south. Up here, it's going to be a little bit later. It's going to be probably water temperatures in the 60s where things get going. But water temperatures in the 60s, man, upper 50s, 60s, everything in your tackle box can work. Things come alive, and a lot of guys aren't fishing in the fall. It's one of my favorite times to fish. Guys are, they're hunting, they're watching football, back to school, and there's no boats. There's not another boat at the launch ramp today. We're here in late September. Great time to get out on the water. And but follow that water temperature, but length of day is most important in the fall. Great question now. That's an interesting question, and I like to pay attention to all of that stuff. The question is about turtles. He experienced when he sees a lot of turtles in an area, he doesn't get bit. He goes into areas that don't have the turtles. He tends to do a little bit better. And I can agree. I've seen that, and I've also seen it the other way around. Here's some old school thought. When you see turtles popping up out in the middle in any place that you're fishing, oftentimes that's an indication that there's structure down there. There's a piece of wood, a concrete, something out off the bank that those turtles like to relate to, feed on, and so turtles can be a really good indicator to let you know that there's great offshore structure. It's something that we used to use, back before we had side imaging. So You know, so that definitely can be a deal. But I personally, you know, when I see a lot of turtles, now I've caught bass around them. I've caught bass where they're not at. I don't know if they bully. Maybe they do bully or chase the fish out of the area that you're in. I don't know. But I've had a lot of experience catching them around the turtles. I haven't put that together, but it's a great question. You want to pay attention and observe that, you know, patterns come in so many different forms. The turtles in the lake that you're fishing may be feeding on some type of habitat that the bait fish don't like. Or it's, you know, there's maybe an indication that there's not good forage, not good nutrition in that area, or maybe stagnant water. They may be, because turtles can survive in that, they don't need to breathe the water. So they may be pointing you on your particular lake. They may be telling you something, and you're putting that together. It's a great observation on your body of water. It's a great question too.
Michael wants to know if a rattle trap is still something you'll break out in the fall.
Is a rattle trap something I will still break out in the fall is the question. Absolutely. A lipless bait is a tremendous bait to be fishing around the fall. It's really a great bait all year long. It gets, we use the lipless baits like a rattle trap in the spring, and they're notorious for drawing big bites in the springtime. Texas red, Rayburn red, you know, the big red colors that we like to throw that time of year. They're dynamite, and it's odd because a lot of people, like with jerk baits, they put them down when the spring is over. But I want to tell you, it's a terrific bait any time of year. It's one of the best reaction tools that there are. And in the early season, when the fall patterns start coming, the bait starts grouping up, the water temperature is still really warm. I've seen it where the lipless bait is the only way to trigger the bites. It's so good in so many different ways, whether it's yo-yoing it, ripping it through the schools of bait, dropping it. It's a powerful triggering tool, and it's excellent in the fall. And if you're a smallmouth fisherman, you never want to take it off your line. The smallies will bite it all year long. Great question now.
So moved over to YouTube, and Richard would like to know, hey PG-13, would you prefer a finesse worm or a finesse jig? For example, like what do you throw in each?
Great question, Richard. Would I prefer a finesse worm or a finesse jig? And the answer is yes. Man, you know, there are times when the short compact profile is a better tool, and there's time when that long slender finesse worm is a better tool. And by the way, welcome all YouTube viewers today. But you know, is there a system as the water temperature drops? You know, I have a tendency to go more and more towards the jig, because there's something that happens as the water temperature drops. Those fish kind of get dum-dum, especially the big ones, and they'll start biting those bigger baits, those thicker, you know, bigger profile baits. So I have a tendency to move more and more towards a jig as the water temperature falls. But hey, I want you to check something out. This is a finesse jig. But we had John Cruz on from Missile Baits, obviously, and Ike has the Ike's micro jig. I almost forgot the name. It's finessier than this. It's one full size down from this jig. Man, I can't wait to get that bait. I tried to steal the ones that John brought to the show, but he caught me, so I don't have them. I don't think they're available till this month sometime. But look for those. Those micro jigs are going to be a really terrific way to trigger strikes when things are tricky, a little bit harder to catch. But I'm telling you right now, finesse jig, finesse worm, especially on the new body water, I got both tied on. As the water temperature cools, I move more and more towards the jig. Great question though. I'm going to talk a little bit about where we're at right now as Eric the intern's here with me. Jeff, my producer, is with me, but we're fishing a new body of water. But I want to talk a little bit about what we're fishing right now. Is I've not been here before, and I'm doing a lot more talking than I am fishing. But what we have here is a neck, right? The body of water necks down and goes underneath this culvert, this tunnel right here, and then the lake continues on. Well, with the rain that we've had, I'm seeing current. I'm seeing the current move through this tunnel. And anytime I see an area that necks down like this, you know the current's going to increase. We know we've had rain, so we're going to have even more current. So this is definitely an area that I want to target. And I don't know that we'll catch any through here, but this is a high percentage area to be targeting and looking for this time of year. And we've got, you know, concrete, current, blow down trees, flooded bushes. We got a multitude of habitat all coming together right here. So we're gonna make a few casts in here, see if we can't get a bite or two. What else you got, E? Best scenario, buzzbait versus whopper plopper. That's the question, right? The best case scenarios. You know, boy, they're very similar baits, right? They're both surface baits. They both have a prop driven scenario. They're both notorious for catching big fish. There's no doubt about it. You know, and boy, it's just so hard, you know, when you're on that bite, you know, which one do you pick up? And I'm certainly going to give both of them a fair shot, an opportunity to work. But my experience been with the whopper plopper bite is the buzzbait is a more consistent bite. You're going to catch bass more consistently on a buzzbait, and you got better options there too. You got 1/4 ounce buzzbaits, you got bigger blades, squeakers, you got a lot of variety there, and I think it's a little bit more versatile of a bait. But I'm here to tell you, when you're catching them on a whopper plopper, you're catching giants. So you want to give that an opportunity to work. You want to certainly explore that. You know, my experience when I'm catching them on a whopper plopper, they're 4 and 5 pounders. They're big ones. So I'll switch back and forth, but I will tell you this, that buzzbait is a more versatile bait. You'll get more bites with it. But this is also got a launch ramp, right? We got a launch ramp here to even make this even more of an interesting combination. The water's necking down. We've got a lot of current. I'm always going to make a cast to a launch ramp. If you guys never have done that, you got to do it. Wherever you are in the country, launch ramps. This is a trolling motor only lake, so it won't have the washout that you get all over in other places. But it's still, it will get a washout from the current. So you'll get concrete, you'll get a little bit of decrease in depth right at the end of the ramp. And boy, I mean, especially this time of year when fishing is difficult, in some places in the fall, in the early fall transition, boy, you can just run around and fish launch ramps at your particular lake and expect to have a chance to catch a few fish. We got a lot of depth change here too. This lake has been holding a consistent 4 feet, but right here on the bridge, we've dropped down to 8 feet. And you'll see that a lot when you neck down like this, it increases the flow. That flow is gonna gouge out the bottom here. It's gonna give you another foot of depth, just, you know, every time. And I can feel the rock at the base of this. Such a good place for a fish.
Robert wants to know about using a double fluke over a single. Is that ever something you do?
I have used the double fluke over the single. Boy, we really saw that live with James Elam winning the tournament. He was using a single fluke rig. Of course, in the Bassmasters, you're only permitted to use a single fluke and or a single bait presentation of any kind. So, and he won the tournament with that strategy. But one of the double fluke is something that I've used around the herring lakes. It's really erratic. I've used it around smallmouth from time to time. There are times when, you know, I feel like it really has made a difference and it has triggered some strikes. When those fish are really, really difficult to catch, it's kind of like, you know, a school of fish can trigger a strike better than an isolated fish can. So, you know, there's certainly something to be said about that rig. And one of the interesting things I tell you about the fluke, and I fished a fluke for smallmouth for years, largemouth. It's a great weapon. And my approach was snap, snap, snap. I'd move it real fast or real slow, right? And make it dart in an erratic fashion, you know, to trigger those strikes. But what I noticed And you know, about the herring lakes is that the technique that can, and you saw James Elam do it, you saw Anthony Gagliardi do it when he won on Lake Hartwell, is it's a different approach. It's a sweep. It's a sweep and reel in. And I think they're making that fluke go straight. They're making it try to look like a herring, because herring run straight. They run fast as they can in a straight line, and that sweep, reel in the slack, sweep, reel in the slack is a better representation of a herring. It wins those herring tournaments. So you got to add that to your arsenal. It's a different way to fish a fluke. It's not one that I've used a lot, but I've seen tournament after tournament get won on the professional level using that sweep when they're around the bluebacks. Interesting stuff.
So going back to Topwater, we just talked about the Buzzbait versus the whopper plopper. Greg wants to know, does the Zara spook still have a place?
Yeah, I think the spook is clearly, hi guys, we're filming on a show right now, so I'm talking to the camera. You guys like to fish? Catch big bass here? But the question is on the Zara spook is a walk in the dog style action versus the whopper plopper action, buzzbait. And man, I'm telling you, you still got to keep that popper, that chugger, and now you got to add the pencil popper. There is a variety of topwater baits, but to answer your question, absolutely. One of my favorite baits is one of the big walk the dog baits, right? A single knocker, and it's one of my favorite topwater baits, and it's always going to be a great action. That walk the dog action is going to trigger strikes from smallmouth, from largemouth, and yeah, you definitely want to keep that in your arsenal. And I know it makes it more challenging, but here's something that I do that helps me when I'm throwing those big topwater plugs like that, is I like to use a snap. And I don't have one on this particular crankbait, but I probably have them one-on-one, but a snap, not a snap swivel, but a snap. And what that allows me to do is, I don't ever know. One day, they might be hitting the whopper plopper 1 hour, they might be hitting that better than they're hitting the spook, then they're hitting a pencil popper. And I can use a small snap, and I can efficiently change the style of bait that I'm using and the color really, really quick, and it helps me dial in on what topwater bait to throw. That way I don't have to have 5 topwater rods rigged with 5 different lures. I can have one topwater rod rigged with a snap, and it can cover that whole thing. But do not put your walk in the dog baits down. Keep those spooks rocking. I promise you, they're killers. When the fish are biting them, that's what they want. Sometimes they want the plopper, sometimes they want the chugger, the pop-R style bait. Sometimes it's the buzz bait. You have to go through your process. What did Gerald Swindle call it? He'd go through his starting lineup. I love that. You got to check out G's starting lineup on Bass U TV. But I have the same starting lineup with just about everything, and topwater is no different. I've got my go-to baits, and I make sure I cycle through all of them. Great question. Yeah, square, you know, it does look like a great square bill spot. The reason why, you know, I went with, you know, a deeper diving bait like a wiggle wart is because I'm sitting in 8 feet of water, and my square bills are going to get down about 2 feet deep. So I'm throwing a bait that can get down a little bit deeper, and that's why I opted for it. But it's a great square bill location leading up to here, and as I'm coming up over this culvert, there's a beautiful piece of metal right there, and I'm so surprised every time I throw in here that I'm not getting a bite. But I got one of my favorite square bills tied on, and it's a Rapala. It's a balsa bait, and when I'm fishing, you know, I keep my color choices simple. This is chartreuse with a brown back, or I'm using a shad pattern. The square bill is such a versatile tool. I used it to great success all over the country and certainly around here. But this little Rapala is a killer square bill. It's incredibly buoyant, so it's very, very strong around trees, wood. any type of heavy cover. It's gonna be able to float, be able to get you through that stuff. And it has a tremendous presence in the water, like a big vibration, a big thump. So, and that's what we were looking for, you know, when we're fishing these styles of baits, is we want something, you know, a lot of times with a real big presence in the water, and this definitely gives it, and it gives you that chance to catch those big fish. But one of the things, and I gotta recommend that you guys go check it out, because there's a couple guys that are amazing at square bill fishing, and we've got both of them talking about fishing crankbaits on Bass U TV, and one of them is Kevin Short, who has won a tremendous amount of Bassmaster tournaments fishing a square bill, and Kevin Van Em. They're both talking about cranking on bassu.tv, so I want you to go check that out. But when we're ready, we're gonna go underneath this bridge. It looks like we've got some giant spiders, poisonous snakes. I don't know what other critters are living under there, but I want to go under that bridge. And as my producer looks at me and says, no, we're not going under that bridge. Come on, Jeff.
Okay, here we go, Pete. Joseph, if you got a call from FLW, MLS, and each invite you to their door, where are you going to fly?
That's a great question. I appreciate you putting me on the spot, Joe. Who is it, Joe?
Joseph Moore.
Joseph Moore asks if FLW, Bassmasters, and MLF all came calling, which one you going to? And the answer to that question is, I don't know. I will tell you this, there's a few things that I want to weigh in on. You know, Bassmasters has been around for 15 years. They started the sport. They created this thing we all love, watching Ray Scott do it. I've always been a dream of mine to win the Bassmasters Classic, and it still is. I still go out and compete in the Opens, and I'm still trying to get back to the Classic again, and I want to try to win that. That's something that I definitely want to do. The FLW, I fished FLW for years on the top level, and the qualifiers, the Costas. I really enjoyed it over there. Had some great success winning a couple FLW tournaments, and the people in the FLW, they run an amazing tournament trail, and they really care for their competitors as good as anybody out there, and I've always appreciated them for that. They were the first ones to come out with $1 million tournament and the giant payouts, so kudos to them. It's a great tournament trail. They've made some changes this year. They've got marshals in the boat this year doing some great stuff in the sport of fishing, and they've got the biggest participation out there, so I really like the FLW. So, you know, MLF is new to me. I watch it. It's exciting to watch. A lot of people that I take fishing love the MLF format. They love the concept of every single fish counts, and you know, so it's a great new product. We think it's exposing the sport to some new people. With the Outdoor Channel, they're showing up on CBS. A lot of people are looking at fishing maybe that have never looked at it before, and I love that. It's a really neat format. It's a new format to me. I would like to try it, but you know, bottom line, as a professional angler, you know, you got to make the decision that, you know, in the short term, is it going to care for you and your business? You have an opportunity to make a living there. And in the long term, you know, what am I going to be doing after fishing? And, you know, is the credentials that I established while fishing that tournament trail, are they going to be able to carry me as I go, you know, through the sport of fishing? So that's what you know, and I don't know all the details. You know, I saw some of the details on the payouts come out from Bassmasters and FLW, and I haven't seen all the MLF stuff, so I got to look at the dollars and cents too, and see what makes the best sense. But boy, I tell you, I can appreciate what them guys are going through. We saw this week where a lot of guys declared. We saw Skeet Reese is moving over to MLF, and Greg Hackney and Edwin Evers, and, you know, a pile of really super talented guys are going over there to fish. Still a lot of guys undeclared. My buddy Ike, we don't know what he's doing. Kevin, we don't know what he's doing. Justin Lucas and Josh Bertrand, who are just lighting up the Bassmaster Elites this year. So we don't know a lot about what's going on. So it's a great question. We're just going to have to wait and see, and it's going to be exciting for fishing. Here's the great news, you know. Sport's getting, you know, a lot of people are looking at this sport that have never seen it before, and that's great. You know, that's going to be good for our sport, and the fishermen are going to benefit because they've got a lot of options, and it looks like they're going to have more money to fish for this year. So after being a pro, I can commiserate with that because I mean, I love it more than anything, but it can be a very challenging way to make a living. And I'm glad to see that the anglers are going to have more of a benefit this year. And you know, so there's a lot going on. It seems like it's all good, and I look forward to seeing what happens. Great question now, long-winded answer. Come on, Jeff, can we go under there? He's looking at me like I'm crazy. He won't let me go under there. You believe that? You know this is a fishing show that we're producing here, right? We got to get down and dirty. We got to get in with the snakes and the spiders and the giant snapping turtles, and we got to get in with all that stuff. Jeff thinks he's filming an ESPN production where he's watching a NFL football game or something. Man, they're not going in there. We got to go in there. As he's cussing me, getting his camera broke down right now. Hopefully we'll get to go under there. Hey, just to let you know, and we didn't catch anything here, and I threw a finesse jig. I threw a variety of crankbaits. I'm going to drop finesse on them a little bit just to keep them honest. But here, we're fishing on the upstream side, and a lot of guys, you know, the eddies are over there. Current's coming plowing through, but it's been my experience that you never want to neglect the upstream side of the current. The water's smashing into this wall, into this bridge, and it's bringing bait with it. The water flow is increasing, and it's creating some feeding opportunities here. So never ever neglect the upstream side of a place. It can be better than the downstream side. Not all the time, but sometimes it can be better, and a lot of times they're bigger, the fish. And to give you an example, like if you're the biggest guy out there, you're not going to be in the back of the line. You're going to be in the front of the line. You're going to be the first one to get to the food. And that's what these bass are. The biggest bass, they don't want to, collect scraps. They want to be up front catching those big shad, those big bluegills that are coming by.
So I went back to YouTube. I got a question from Griffin. I've been hearing all this stuff we're talking about falls transition, but his deal is he's out in Oklahoma and he's limited to the bank, and he's dealing with knee-high bushes at times, areas where he can't necessarily take a lot of tackle into. Do you have any tips, tactics for him as a bank fisherman?
Yeah, I mean, there's such good tackle out there these days, such good tackle systems. Flambeau is one of them, and you can pack a lot into a little container. But you are limited, right? So you're going to have to limit your color selections. You're going to have to limit your choices a little bit. And I'm gonna show you a few options that you might have as we kind of clean up the boat here just a little bit. But we just happen to have a few, and that question was not planted, by the way, for Flambeau purposes. But I just happen to have one of Ike's little mini tackle boxes, and you've got a ability to strap, carry this over the shoulder, which is great. A little, this is one of Ike's deals, but you've got so much room in here to carry all that you need, for a walk around the pond. And what you want to do is you want to carry your high percentage stuff. You want to get some power baits. You want to get some finesse baits. Depending on the time of year, you may want topwaters and crankbaits. Depending on the habitat, if you're fishing around a lot of bushes, it's going to be challenging to fish some of that type of baits. But you want to try to keep it simple. You want to keep colors to, very simplistic choices, 2 or 3 colors of each style of bait. And that way you can fit it all into one pack. But you can really do a lot with the tacklebacks that are available out there today. This is a neat one that Flambeau's just come out with. But it's a great question. I love fishing from the bank. I still do it all the time. Me and my son, we go fishing from the bank. And a lot of times what we do when we go fishing from the bank is we'll take just the type of bait that we want to learn about. Like if we want to learn whopper ploppers, we may just go fish those. spinnerbaits or chatterbaits, and we may just bring, you know, a skeleton crew of baits we want to learn about. You know, the gear ratio on the reel on the crankbait I was throwing is a great question. There's a lot of opinions on that kind of thing. And I like the high speed reel. I use a 7-to-1 most oftentimes when I'm cranking. And the reason is I have the ability to slow down, but being able to speed up is very, very difficult to do when you have that low speed, like that 5-to-1. Man, it's hard to make that crankbait burn. It really is. It's really a challenge. So, but I can slow it down, I can speed it up. But one of the things I like the most about it is when a fish takes a crankbait, I want to be able to load that crankbait rod and put a lot of energy into it and keep those hooks pinned, and a high-speed reel helps me do that a lot better. So that's the way that I like to fish. You know, I can always slow down, but it's hard to speed up. High-speed reel lets me do that. A lot of times when it comes to fishing a square bill or a lipless crankbait, you really got to burn it to trigger the strike. So that's why I go high speed. I remember back in the day, we used to throw a bait called the sluggo, and I don't know, it's a Lunker City lure. Some of you guys may still remember it, but this was the predecessor to the Senko, predecessor to the fluke, and it's still a great bait. But I'll never forget, they came out with a pink color way back then, 20 years ago. And boy, we caught them. We caught them really strong on that pink colored sluggo. Now I throw it, one of my best smallmouth lures is an X-Wrap in pink, jerk bait. Pink spinnerbaits can be real effective at times. You know, pink Senkos can be real effective at times. So there's definitely a time for it. You know, it definitely has some visibility. The fish relate to it. It's been some of the pros' secret color for a long time, but it's a great tool to trigger strikes, and it definitely has some great visibility in stained water. You're right to observe that. So don't discount pink. Get that color in your box. You ready, Jeff? I'm not letting them off the hook, guys. I'm making them take me under there. We've been throwing at this bridge now for an hour. I want to get under there. I can see this current blasting through there, but I don't know if you've shown that in there, Jeff. But have you gotten a picture of all that nastiness hanging down? I see spider webs. I see giant reptiles, lions, tigers, and bears. I also see a lot of current, and I want to get on the other side of that, and I want to try to fish the downstream side of this. And we'll get over on the other side. We'll see if we can pop a few over there on this lake, Lake X, here in southern New Jersey. What I'm really most excited about is I appreciate all your questions, guys. I appreciate you watching. This is our first attempt at you know, our test period for our Bass University Live. We're making sure our gear all works, making sure the feed's coming through. Let me know what you think about that. You know, how's the picture look? How's the sound coming through? You know, is everything look good from that perspective, from the production standpoint? Let me know. And come on with me here. We're gonna try to sneak our way through the bridge here. I'm going to use my Minn Kota here, my Ultrex. Man, the water's up now, so we're real close to I hope there's no wasps. It's scary. Whoa, look at that. I see on the sonar, the sonar came up real big. about to get dripped on. Stalagmites, stalactites. I don't know what we got going on in this thing. We made it. All right, we're through. I see a lot of eddies forming in the corners, which is really cool. We'll see how that's affecting our fishing. I see another bridge down there, not quite as scary as this one. But I'm gonna turn this boat around, kind of take my time while those guys, while they get the tripod and the camera get set back up, and we're gonna throw a jig. We'll throw a few things at, over here on this bank. Because what I'll do is here's an interesting thing, and you guys may be thinking it, when your boat runs over a spot like that, do you spook the fish? And I gotta think, yeah, a lot of times you do spook the fish. But the heavier the current is, the quicker the fish are gonna recover. So we're gonna let it rest for just a second. And we're gonna come back down on it. He must recognize this place. We've got a snakehead problem up in this part of the country. Anything connected to the Delaware River or the Chesapeake has got a lot of snakeheads in it. Yeah, high percentage place, right guys? I mean, look, we can see the current, we can see the eddies coming through here. If I'm unable to catch one through here, it's Eric the intern's fault for distracting me. Jeff seemed to make it through unscathed. Don't see any ticks or spiders on him. We're sitting on about 5-6 feet of water, showing a lot of bait under the boat. I'm cranking on the bank here. You can see the water, the eddies coming around and sweeping on the bank. So it's dropping, it's coming down already. You know, and it sounds to me like you've got fish in the river up there. All right, he's talking about, I gotta let you guys know what the question was. In Indiana, his lake, the water temperature's dropped about 10 degrees down into the 60s now. Will smallmouth become active in the river first or out on the lake first is the question. Let me just make sure I got it right. It's a pretty complicated question. But that's pretty cool. You know, we've got, it's interesting because I fish an area that has smallmouth that are river-oriented smallmouth, and then there's main lake or base type smallmouth. And boy, when that water temperature starts dropping, man, you got to look in both places. But here's the deal: if you've got current in that river, I don't care what the water temperature is. You got current flow. That's where I want to look first. The current is going to make those fish become active first, and that's definitely where I'm going to look, is those current-based patterns. And it'll start off with smallmouth. I mean, they'll go from only biting drop shots and Ned rigs and that kind of stuff. But boy, if you get current and you get a water temperature drop, things like crankbaits, things like jerkbaits, all your power baits are going to come alive, you know, when that situation starts to present itself. So you definitely want to look for that. Still want to have your drop shot, all that finesse stuff rigged up, but you want to look for those power baits to become a bigger player once that starts happening. So if there's current, I'd look in the river first. No question about it. Absence of current, you know, it'd be hard to say which one's going to turn on first. Certainly the river would again be my best choice, because the water temperature is going to hit there first. It's going to change things first. The main part of the lake's probably going to be the slowest to warm up. It's going to be the slowest to cool down. So I would start looking in the river, but I wouldn't take my eyes off that lake. Great question though. We're going to have that around here. You know, I'm still sitting at 75-degree water temperature. We start seeing water down into the 60s, low 60s. Oh, our smallmouth are going to get rocking in this part of the country. I can't wait for that. Boy, you can feel, and you want, this is a cash and cranking rod, and it's a graphite rod, but man, I can feel so well. I can feel the rocks coming off the lip. There's you know, a lot of hard structure right here in the mouth of this culvert here, this bridge, and man, I could just feel it so good as I'm beating off of it with this square bill. Hold on, boys, we might bump bottom over there.
Casey wishes he would hurry up and catch a fish.
You know, I'm with you, Casey. But here's the scenario. We did some filming with Bass University TV with John Cruz on one of our local hot ponds. And, you know, I've never fished this lake. I don't know what it's capable of, but, you know, of course, we caught one before the cameras got rolling. That's a typical scenario. But the one thing in common with these fishless days that we've had on the water is Eric the intern has been with us both times. I don't know what's going on. There may be some bad mojo. We're gonna have to figure that part of it out.
I mean, I don't really have any defense. You're right.
He says he has no defense. Oh, it's still summertime, right? It's still hot weather. We're fishing in a limited area. You can hear him on the mic? Okay, good. Well, I was repeating all the questions because I didn't know if you guys could hear Eric the intern, but I'm just being told now that he's being picked up on my mic. So it's a good deal. Oh, yeah, he is mic'd.
Brand new, as 5 minutes ago.
We just got Eric the intern mic'd. It might have been helpful if you guys would have told me that beforehand. All right, we've gone through our process. We finessed fish. Man, I'm fishing in a high percentage area, and here's the deal, guys. Man, when you're fishing in a high percentage area with positive fishing conditions and you're not catching them, it's time to go. It's time to go. And that's what I look at with this kind of stuff. We've got current, we've got, you know, decent water clarity. We've got a lot of good stuff going on here that we should have been able to catch fish. And if we're not getting bit, then it's time to try a new spot. You know, we got to move to a different area. And we're gonna, if you guys want to stay with us, we might go down this lake here a little bit and try another one of the bridges. They're high percentage areas. I don't know, it's going to take us about a half hour to operate down there, guys. So we'll see. We may be back with you guys in a little while. We're going to maybe go look at one of these other bridges. We're going to run some more tests. We'll probably pop back up on live. I appreciate you guys watching us on our lunch break here, trying out a new pond, trying out some of our new gear. We hope you guys like it. We're going to be delivering a lot more of this on some great bodies of water with some of the greatest anglers in the world. So look for that stuff to come. Thanks a lot for your questions. And come on over and join us at BassU.TV, BassU.TV. Try it for 10 days free right now. And for all you hunters and fishermen out there, we've got some great Flambeau Outdoors discounts, huge discounts for all their outdoor line that's coming in just a couple of weeks. So look for that over on BassU.TV for our subscribers only. Thanks everybody on YouTube, thanks everybody on Facebook, and thanks all our subscribers at BassU.TV. We will be back with another test in just a few minutes.
Beautiful. Oh, on I was gonna check your phone.
When you get a chance, E,
Yep.
in the middle seat where you're sitting,
Yeah, we're off.